So hi everyone, welcome to this session where I will cover things that are related to why customer service and field service are better together. So one thing I want to note is that as you can see on your screen, I am using a Mac. And that means that certain things kind of work funny on a Mac, which is why I'm actually thinking of getting a PC now. But that's a whole story for another day. But before I get this wonderful question into the chat, yes, you can indeed implement, configure, and do basically everything on a Mac. It's just that the browser functionality sometimes works a bit weird, so just kind of a fair warning before I get started. Okay, so, oh, that is not what I wanted to do. Okay, so I'll just keep it as is, despite the fact that you may see the slide on the side. So my presentation is why customer service and field service are better together. The goal of this presentation is not to teach you everything that you need to know, but to rather kind of say, okay, those are some ideas and kind of things that you should consider thinking about when you have a customer that has kind of a field service implementation and that they think that field service alone is sufficient for their needs. I can tell you from personal experience working with those customers that if you implement both together, the possibilities are just ridiculously wonderful. So let's get started. So first, a little bit about me if you don't know who I am. So hi everyone, my name is Vicky. I'm based in Vancouver, British Columbia. And today is actually a sunny day, which is quite rare and very much appreciated. So I'm an independent Microsoft Dynamics 365 consultant. I'm also a Dynamics community moderator. I started also my own online school, which is called MS Dynamics Certified. I am mostly known in the community to be the sort of certification go-to person, but I also do implement. And I am 13 times Microsoft Dynamics 365 certified and overall 15 times Microsoft certified. And I'm working on 2 other Power Platform certifications at the moment, because I guess that 15 is not enough. So, so today's agenda, we will cover cases, we will cover incident types and work order generation, queues, knowledge-based management, SLAs, and I do leave time at the end always for a question period because I know that I will get questions. So I kind of tried to aim for about 30 to 45 minutes presentation and then try to leave some time at the end to basically help people. And this presentation will be a mix of me demoing and kind of the more traditional PowerPoint format, because some of the stuff that I'm going to talk about are kind of tough to visualize until you actually see it live, if that makes sense. Now, let's talk about cases and how we can use cases to better help organizations that are implementing Dynamics 365 field service. So here, I want you to think of your typical kind of either preventative maintenance or repair field service organization, whether you're repairing a heating system, ventilation system, electric system, plumbing, even computer repair, for example, or anything of that sort. Usually the process in 99.9% of cases is as following. First things first is you have the case creation phase where you have a customer that calls in a company and says, hey, I'm having, I don't know, my computer ventilation is making way too much noise. It's kind of making funny noises. It's really, really hot, the computer, when I put it on my lap, and kind of those types of issues. And normally what happens is you call a call center or you chat with an agent if you are using omnichannel, and basically you kind of have that stage. And then what happens is that from that case, usually comes a work order, which is when a technician is usually sent on site. And for example, if it's a computer repair, you're going to have a technician who's going to have a look at the computer, who's going to open up the machine, who is going to make whatever repair that needs to be done. At the end, depending on the case, whether that's under warranty or not, there's usually some type of an invoicing stage. Usually this is not handled in CRM. Most of the time it's going to be handled via some type of an ERP system, whether that would be business control or finance and operations, or could be a different third-party ERP system. So when you think about cases, I kind of want you to think, okay, how can I minimize double entry, and how can I make the customer's life easier? If you are, again, a consultant, if you are a Dynamics 365 administrator, this would be more of how do I make my colleagues' life easier? Because I've worked with a client very, very recently who basically had a situation where all phone calls were logged into a Microsoft Excel spreadsheet. Yes, that actually still exists, where they had to send basically copy and paste the details, and then they have to copy and paste the detail into a work order management system. And it was basically the classic case of having a bunch of silos. They had their customer service using one tool, their field service using another tool, and their accounting department using another tool. Now, I want you to think, if we bring everything together under one umbrella, which could be the Power Platform or the whole Dynamics 365 family of products, I want you to think of, okay, that case information contains information that is relevant to a work order, and contains also information that is relevant to your invoicing stage. So what I'm going to do here is, yes, okay, perfect, it shows. I want you to think of field service also as your customer service tool. So if I go here to my cases, and I open here this test case, or any case for that matter. And by the way, this is what's currently available out of the box. And when I demo this, sometimes I get comments such as, oh my God, I did not know this was even a thing. So I just want you to think. You're having your case title here, which is relevant because it shows you what the work order potentially could be about. It shows you maintenance. So for example, all your subject tree, again, could be relevant because this could lead to generating a incident type, which could then be used to generate the future work order itself. I want you to think kind of this tool as your starter point of field service, which I think a lot of people do not see. But when you work with both products, it works great. The product could be, again, converted into a customer asset and can be linked to a customer asset. And I want you to think about contacts that this may be your primary contact on a work order. And the great thing about this case management here is when you enter information, for example, here I have an air conditioner repair issue. If I have all of my air conditioner here as a product, it's really great to kind of have your system again under one umbrella. And even to make this even easier, you have here your incident type, which I'm going to cover in my next topic here. Incident types and work order generation, why are they so great, and how does it work basically? The great thing about like incident type is that I want you to think incident types, work order template. I think the whole incident type should probably be called a work order template personally. If a certain Ben Vollmer is on the line, hi. That would be a great idea. And what I want you to think is that the whole incident time functionality, its purpose is to basically control the field mapping between cases and work orders. So the reason why I'm talking about this is that when you have industries that have a few standard work order types, so for example, I've seen this in cases such as electrician, plumbers, as well as the HVAC industry, which stands for heating, ventilation, as well as air conditioning. It's basically going to save your team so much time in terms of repetitive data entry. So for example, when I've worked with kind of like HVAC clients, they usually have I would say 3 to 4 work order types that can be just repetitive. They have boilers work order type, they have chillers, they have a rooftop unit, and then they have kind of an other, which is a catch-all for pretty much anything else. And the great thing about that is that in those cases, the process is the same, the work order process is the same, the tasks are the same, everything is pretty much very standard process. So the reason why I want you to think that is because this incident type here that you see on your screen controls what information is automatically created in your work order. So again, the whole purpose of this session is to make you see how Customer Service Hub or customer service is not just your typical case management functionality. I want you to think customer service can allow me to serve any customer inquiry, regardless of it just being a phone call system. It can do so much more than that. If you start to dig a little deep, it's crazy what I've seen. So for example here, if I link this incident type to, if I link this case to this like incident type, and then I go and I just generate the work order here, which I click convert to work order. A work order for yes, because this is my test case. So like I've tested this. Again, this is a funny Mac browser behavior, which means that a new window was actually created. So, but otherwise it works great on a Mac as well, as you can see. So here, as you can see, I had so much information there that was already there for me without me doing anything. So I have all your accounts, all your customer details, I have my statuses there, I have my work order type, I have my price list already there. I have my incident, I have an estimated duration, and even when I go to products, you can already include parts here if that applies to your particular case. You can include services here, again, as part of your incident type. You can include service tasks. So this is, again, only what is available out of the box. If you have a very complex case, for example, if you have a company that works into the restoration industry, they probably have what's called a protocol, which means that you have basically a work order type per insurance parent, because every insurance company works differently. So even in those extreme cases, you can still have incident types, but you may not be able to. Is there a sound issue? Can you guys hear me?
Hi there, Vicky. Yes, we can hear you. Yes, we can hear you.
Perfect.
I think you were breaking up a little while, but it's fine though. It's fine now.
Okay, I'm so sorry. Because I thought that nobody could hear me anymore. So again, this is 2020's main issue with those Teams meetings, either the connection being lost or the sound being lost. So essentially, when you look at those particular incident types, you can do so much more based on the case information. And even when you, again, as I mentioned earlier, I'm sorry if I am repeating myself, but this could scale up in the extreme example of a restoration company that has, I would say, 3 main incident types, but they have particularity based on 25, let's say, different protocols based on each insurance company. So based on the parents, based on the kind of incident type, you can have basically 75 work order generation templates that would save such an organization hours and hours and hours and hours per week that could be spent restoring more homes more quickly, and would really, really help every homeowner or every business or every renter in the case of a massive natural disaster where this type of organization would be busy. They would be able to send more technicians on site more quickly, especially with the whole climate change situation. Unfortunately, this may happen more in the future. So again, we need this functionality to be able to go at scale, which is what the combination of customer service and field service can do. So again, back to my presentation. So again, those are the possibility in terms of incident type. Now, queues. You might be thinking of queues as only a way to assign customer service representative in a call center scenario to try to get the best agent to answer at the quickest time possible. But queues can do so much more than that. It's not only for a call center scenario. It can also work for technicians, especially if you have a very complex requirement in terms of your technician assignment, and you need to assign technicians on a scale. For example, queues I would say would be best served for organizations that either do not have the budget for the resource schedule optimization, but that still need to have some automation in terms of their technician assignment. So again, if you do not have the size yet for RSL, but that you still need something, what you can do is what I did here. Or again, something similar. Again, I just want you to be thinking right now. I don't want you to just copy everything I'm doing, because this is a case of go with what is best for your customer in terms of what they actually need. Sorry, this might take a while, but basically here what I did with the queues is you can essentially enable queues for pretty much any entity that you want in order to assign a record to somebody. Again, queues are not just limited to cases, but you can use them for work orders, you can use them for leads, you can use them for opportunities. You can pretty much use them in any scenario where you basically feel the need to assign work items in a particular order. And this includes work order. So for example, again, I'm not going to explain here exactly everything about queues, but essentially what you can do is you can create what are called routing rule sets, where basically what I'm going to show you right now is you can create those routing rule sets. And what it does is again, here is you have those rule items where they work in order of priority. So here the general rule of thumb is that you go from the more precise case to the most general case. So here, for example, there are many instances in field service, and I've seen this a few times and way more than you think, that some customers of some organizations have explicitly said, I want to have, let's say, Vicky, I want to have Raz, I want to have Sarah specifically come in to be my go-to default resource, unless, of course, they are sick or they are on vacation or something of that sort. And what happens is you can automatically do that. So for example, if I look at this particular rule, you can set a bit like what you would use advanced find. Whereas, for example, if a customer account is one of these, assign it to this particular user. And then what happens is once you have all of those rules, which are designated as the preferred resource, then what happens is once you have your case converted into a work order, then basically the owner of the work order is automatically going to be that particular resource. And then from there, you can assign the technician automatically to the work order as being the person who's going to work on it. And then it kind of goes, again, to working on a scale, but that you're not ready for kind of RSO yet. Then, again, you can go to a more generic sort of rule. For example, we can use similar functionality to assign items by territory. For example, we can say that all, again, if this condition is false, the first one, then you go to the next one, which means that, for example, if a particular work order has to be performed in Washington State, it goes to a particular queue, which can then be linked to a resource pool in field service. And then basically the local dispatcher in, for example, Washington State, can then say, okay, I have 5 technicians. Those are the 5 technicians I have available. I can give it to somebody in that particular state. And same thing if for example, based on skill set. For example, if you have a very specialized skill set, for example, if you have some type of a connected field service device, and you know that you have, let's say, 10 technicians in your particular organization that have that certification to work on those types of devices, then you can assign it to them. And this is just what's possible. So the kind of main takeaway of this particular queue functionality is if you have a customer that is not ready for kind of RSO yet, that basically they are not at the scale where they need to assign thousands and thousands of technicians, but that they want some type of an automation, you can use customer service functionality to meet that particular requirement. So again, queues is probably, I would say, the most underrated customer service functionality, in my personal opinion, because you can just do some crazy stuff with that. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is knowledge-based management of how knowledge-based management, again, it's more than call center functionality. I think that's the main takeaway of my whole presentation. So basically, if you go back to the basics of what a knowledge-based management solution does, it's basically a library of procedures. Now, it does not specify what type of procedures can be included in a knowledge-based functionality, which means you can have procedures for pretty much just about anything, and you can have procedures, again, for any industries, any topic. And did you know that a knowledge-based article can be associated to a work order, to an incident type, can be also assigned to a case, can also be assigned to a lead, even if you really want to be creative in terms of your sales processes. You can send, again, knowledge-based articles to email. You can send those knowledge-based articles not just to customers, but also to your field technicians. So here there is really no limit in terms of what you can do with that and have that information. So, for example, if let's say in a particular HVAC context, because that is an industry that I have a lot of experience with. So basically, this is why I'm using a lot of HVAC specific example. If you have a rooftop unit, for example, there are certain things that you cannot do without basically breaking the warranty of that particular unit, and when you need to simply call the manufacturer, which happens, by the way, with a lot of other products. So you can send out that procedure if a technician would basically uncover a particular issue on site and things like that. And if you want to get really, really fancy, this is something I learned while I was preparing for the PL900 examination, which is the Power Platform Fundamentals, which now covers Power Virtual Agents. And this is something that is kind of mind-blowing. And I think that in the next few years, it's going to uncover a lot of possibility. You can use Power Virtual Agents to integrate with Dynamics 365 customer service and then have people interacting with your bot and then have them get the right article based on keywords. So, for example, in the demo that I saw, I think it was a coffee machine scenario that was not working, and that the coffee machine was a smart coffee machine that had some reading problem, whereas a value of that connected field service was kind of out of range. And then basically, based on that reading, the technician was asked questions by the bot. So for example, and say for example, did you verify the coffee filter? What is the temperature of this? Did you verify the boiling water mechanism and something? And based on the technician's answer, the bot suggested an article and say, okay, those are your next best steps that basically you can take, which is a possibility that if you told me that, for example, this functionality would be existing 2 years ago, and that you told me 2 years ago from today, this would be here, I would be like, no way. This is just too next level. So you can use Power Virtual Agents in more scenarios other than to help customers. You can also help your team members and to share knowledge and to have your team, whoever is a subject matter expert, really share their whole knowledge. In fact, I'm just kind of thinking about it, and I'm thinking, wouldn't that be great if I had a Dynamics 365 certification bot? Because that would save me, I would save quite a bit of time just to answer a lot of those kind of certification questions, or in fact, any type of knowledge base that you have. Again, it's more than a call center scenario. I'm going to repeat this again and again and again. Can do so much more. Now, other than knowledge base, service level agreement, or also known in the community as SLA. Again, enhanced SLAs can be enabled on other entities, not only case. You can also create custom SLAs based on any date time field of your choice. You can also have a multitude of SLA per case to work order scenario. So what do I mean by that? Let me give you kind of an example. In the restoration industry, they have something called the DKI metrics, which means that they have, get this, they have 12 different SLAs that they have to keep track of, because there are certain standards that if you want to have a permit to operate in this particular industry, you must meet more than 12 different SLAs, which are solely based on your response time. Because into the restoration industry, your sole mission and purpose is to restore customers' homes or places of business as quickly as possible. So for example, if you have a flood damage, you probably want to make sure that you can occupy your home as quickly as possible. Same thing if you have a fire damage or you have a water leak or basically any type of disaster. Sorry, and before I get this particular question, you can use SLAs to keep track of those 12 different metrics. You don't need to have one, you can have 12, and yes, it does work. I've personally tested this. Of course, because this is client work, this is not something that I can demo or recreate for you today, unfortunately, but this is something that that actually does work. So, because I try to keep my presentation short, I try to go under 30 minutes because I want to leave a lot of time for a question period. So if we are allowed to do this, you have a 30-minute session of Ask Me Anything.
Thanks for that, Vicky. Yes, much appreciated. And again, we really appreciate you dialing in from so far away, and obviously, with your cough and everything. So we're really grateful that you could do this today. So, look, I think you really covered a sweet spot, really, when it comes to, the scenarios with field services and which components when to use, because often it can be very difficult for people, consultants, and customers to make the decision on which feature they should be using when. And I think your session has helped to really help improve that decision making. So again, thanks for that, Vicky. So as Vicky's mentioned, she's opened up the floor for questions and answers. So please, could you please start asking your questions? And I've shared Vicky's contact details in there. Vicky, I've shared your blog and your LinkedIn. Is there any other social media that you use apart from your blog and your LinkedIn?
No, because I would tell you by far LinkedIn is by far the best way to reach out to me. By far the best way, without a doubt, because I'm kind of hyperactive there. So you will get a very quick response.
Okay, great. So yeah, there you go. That's how you connect with Vicky. So there is a first question come through, Vicky, is by Abjit, who's asking, on a high level, what could be the easiest and most efficient approach if we have a business need where they want to fully automate case management for any type of industry using self-service portals, customer service and field service? Like step one is this, and then step two. Okay, so you're asking for a full end-to-end step for the full automation of case management, including all of those components. So it's a very large question, Abjit. So, but yes, feel free to take it away, and then we'll try and complement your answer if that's okay.
Yeah, sure. So I've dealt with a similar scenario in the past. So for example, if you have, let's say, a web portal and you have customers that are allowed to raise cases. So for example, if I go onto the Apple web portal, if they were using this, and I say that my computer is unusually warm and that, there might be some type of a ventilation system issue, then basically what happened is I would kind of create like some type of an dependent option set where kind of like for example, Apple could be please select a category. So for example, there could be things like software problem, hardware problem, or service problem, which could be Apple Music or like Apple News or something of that sort, or even Apple Arcade. And then basically I would kind of like select hardware, and then it could ask what is the component, and then I could say it's the ventilation, and then basically say, okay, those are the common issues that are happening in terms of the ventilation system, and then I would have a couple of options, and then of course there would be kind of an other, which would be a catch-all for kind of any other issue, which is not very common. And based on that, I would use queues in order to route that. So for example, if for example, I'm having, again, a ventilation issue because my computer is burning hot, then I would route it to probably directly to a technician in order for someone to kind of try to remotely troubleshoot it, especially right now to say, okay, can you try to restart your computer? Can you please try to, turn off your computer for like an hour or something? So I would heavily use queues or kind of even at this stage, probably Power Virtual Agent in order to suggest articles so that people try to self-resolve issues rather than always call an agent or kind of always call a technician. And based on that, again, depending on the scenario, I would either route the case to an agent, route the case to a self-service technician directly, and then based, again, it kind of depends really onto the kind of industry, but it's, in terms of generic, it's kind of always starts by customer service, in my opinion, and then it goes to field service, because it really depends on your industry and the customer. So that's why I can only keep it at that level, if that makes sense.
Thanks for that,
Does that
Vicky.
answer your question?
Thanks, Vicky. Thanks for that. So Abhijit, so obviously there's many different scenarios there that you've covered, and in terms of setting up, a step-by-step process, as Vicky mentioned, there are different variations, and so I think what you'd want to do is, obviously you're fully aware of the fact that the portals have support for the for the customer self-service and for the field service, that you can. Oh yeah, okay. So Abhijit's saying yes, that's exactly what he wanted. So Abhijit's happy with that, with your answer there. So great stuff. But you know where to go. I was hoping that we could find some sort of demo out there, but unfortunately there aren't any full end-to-end demos you can just spin up. You'd have to spin each one up separately, that and then that's the only way really. But I think Vicky's kind of addressed the gaps between the two, and maybe suggested some scenarios in which you could leverage both. So there is a question. So Cocoon's asking, could the D365 remote assist considered be part of this as well?
Well, in terms of remote assist, kind of one potential limitation that I see is that remote assist cannot be used in order to, for example, assist a customer. So for example, if, again, let's bring it back to my 5-year-old MacBook Pro. What happens is that I cannot use remote assist in order to have a kind of like Apple Genius to try to troubleshoot my MacBook Pro virtually. Unfortunately, in order for kind of remote assist to work, it would be, for example, someone from the head office in Cupertino helping a technician based in Vancouver because of his or her expertise in a particular component, or for example, in a particular piece of machinery. So to answer your question, remote assist is more for a global expert to help technicians wherever they are in the world. They are not meant for technicians to help customers that could be anywhere. I wish this would be a possibility in the future. Let's see if that happens.
Definitely exciting times. Lots of technology to cover, but again, as Vicky mentioned, there are certain use cases ideal use cases. So it's not a case of giving everyone access to remote assist. That there are certain hierarchies you want to get a successful use out of remote assist. And thanks for clarifying that for us, Vicky.
Yeah.
So are there any more questions? So the questions we're coming through thick and fast, and and Coquelin is saying thank you very much for your answer there, Vicky. So we're going to keep the chat open for any more questions and answers. Vicky, whilst we've got you, please share a bit about yourself, maybe maybe a bit of information about about what you do and what type of things you're interested in and involved in. We usually give all the speakers a bit of time to talk about themselves, to show the humans in IT, obviously in addition to. So if you could share a bit about yourself, that'd be really cool.
Okay, so hi everyone. I am based in Vancouver. Right now, just kind of a fun fact, if I peek over my computer monitor, I can see the mountains. So I'm based into the downtown Vancouver area, and if I look straight up, because my apartment is facing north, I can see the North Shore Mountains. So basically every 30 seconds or so of this presentation, I was kind of speaking up, just because the view is just priceless. A bit more about myself. So I can tell you what I'm working on right now in terms of my whole learning journey, because that's what I've been involved with quite a lot, is I'm working more on the Power Platform. So especially DA100, which is Power BI. as well as PL 100, which is the Power Platform Admin, the new certification. Thinking about something, I'm thinking about doing something that I've been delaying for quite some time, which is getting a Microsoft Certified Trainer certification, which is something that I've been asked a lot privately to get and say, when are you getting it? And the answer was like, oh, someday. Well, that someday is probably getting way closer. The reason why I chose this was that, have you guys read the book Lean In, which was written by the Facebook COO Sheryl Sandberg? And what she said was, if you see a rocket ship, jump on it and just don't ever look back. And when I first heard about Dynamics 365, I saw a rocket ship, I jumped on it, and this is what I've just been running with. And it kind of led me to places that I never thought, which include doing this very presentation, which includes being on a podcast with Mark Smith, who is in New Zealand. And when I kind of explained this to my parents, that I would be on a podcast that is from New Zealand, my parents, first of all, I had to explain them what a podcast was. And they were like, wow, somebody from New Zealand, which is on the complete other side of the world map. If you look at Vancouver and if you look at Auckland, it's completely on the opposite side. And it's just mind-blowing, like, what opportunities I've got in the last 3 years, and I'm so grateful for it. I love teaching, honestly, and this is something that I love getting back to. I love doing those particular presentations because I really saw a sentence recently, and I think it kind of sums it up too well, which is that we raise ourselves by raising other people. A bit more of what I do outside of Dynamics. What do? I cook a lot. I work out a decent amount, and I'm trying to find healthier ways to eat. This is something that I've been working on since quarantine started, is how food that we put into our body affect our mental well-being, our performance, and kind of everything. So if when this whole quarantine thing is over, I'm going to realize two things. Number one, being around nature and being outside is a blessing, and this is something that I've kind of taken for granted being Canadian, especially living in Vancouver now for like 15 months now. This is something that I will not take for granted. And also the other thing I will not take for granted anymore is that food is fuel, and if you feed your body junk food, which is something that I used to do, unfortunately, your digestive system will greatly affect your basically energy level, and will therefore affect your mental well-being, and will therefore affect how you perform in work, in relationships, kind of everything else. So this is probably going to be my biggest takeaway from this whole like quarantine thing. And of course, I got a certification question. I am planning, so there's a Coquelin, hi Coquelin, who's asking, I am planning to take MB200 and MB230 and then MB600. Could you please point me to good prep resources for these three things? Microsoft Learn is doing a decent job. There is also on my blog, which I'm going to link, there is somebody that I want to thank. His name is Chris from Tampa Bay, Florida. If you're here on the line, hello, thank you. And who took all the Mark Smith videos from kind of OpenEDX, downloaded them on his computer, and then re-uploaded them on Azure. I have all the links on my blog if you want to have access to that content. MB230, again, Microsoft Learn. There are also my courses on MS Dynamics Certified. There is Neil Parker's blog, which is amazing as well, that I would highly recommend check out. MB600. This is probably the most unconventional exam advice that I ever gave. So if someone asked me, I want to go for kind of like MB600, what should I expect? The answer would be study all the Dynamics 365 exam content that is publicly available. The reason is that Microsoft technically speaking, has the right to ask you any question that is from MB901, PL900, MB200, MB210, MB220, MB230, MB240, as well as MB400. And I got questions that could have been on either of those exams. So you have to be ready for all the content possible. The second thing, which is probably the most unconventional Microsoft exam that I've ever given, and this is something that I'm sharing for the first time publicly, so you guys are lucky. Understand the Microsoft exam algorithm, which I am beginning to figure out more and more and more as I've done 15 exams so far, and I'm still going for exam number 16 and 17. The reason why there are sections is because each question that you see on the exam has a difficulty score. And what happens is, if you answer a question correctly, that means you may get a more difficult question in the future. Because if you go deep into the research, you are going to learn quickly that the Microsoft scoring algorithm was largely inspired by the standardized test scoring algorithm, which includes the SAT, the GMAT, and the LSAT. So when you see, so what happens is that a lot of those standardized test advice applies for MB600. So you have to learn how to manage your time effectively. You have to learn how to guess questions, which is probably a skill that saved my life in a few exams. The other thing that I would kind of say is, especially if you are not a native English speaker, learn how to summarize case studies and learn how to extract important information out of cases and how to read quickly. Because MB600, this is something that is publicly known, so I'm allowed to share that type of information, is there are many, again, plural, many case studies onto the MB600. So if you are not a quick reader, you are going to struggle. If you do not know how to extract information on the MB600, you are going to struggle big time. So I would say for kind of MB600, prepare for anything, study the entire dynamics curriculum from all exams, learn how to guess questions. If you are kind of unsure, go for the best answer rather than the perfect one, and learn how to read questions and how to extract important details, and then you should be fine. So, and also make sure that you get the first few questions correctly, because you have a better shot at getting more difficult questions, which means that your score is going up. So the way that Microsoft exams are scored is that 700, which is the passing grade, does not equal having 70% of questions right. The reason why Microsoft was able to gauge your performance level with only about 50 questions is based on the difficulty level of those questions, which means the more difficult questions that you get, the higher chance you have of getting a crazy high score. So yeah, that's my advice for kind of MB600 in a nutshell, which is anything but content related. It's really strategy heavy.
Well, wow, Vicky, look, you know, we were unexpecting a session, but now we've got some great exam tips, advice, as well as health tips as well. So we've kind of walked away with a lot more than what we expected.
Yeah.
But yes, I completely agree with you, Vicky, that you know, I was obviously interested in biohacking as well. Like, everybody's body reacts differently to different foods, and you have to kind of figure out what works for you. Because, you know, some people swear by coffee and some people react badly to it. And I guess every individual has to kind of find out what works for them and not just copy the flocks, really. And so it's interesting, really. But yes, I actually look forward to hearing more about that, because it is something that I'm personally interested in as well. And yeah.
So for example, I had burgers and fries yesterday for dinner, because again, I kind of have a philosophy of 2 cheat meals per week. And even this morning, I'm feeling down in like energy because I did not feed my body the right food. Because I had a pretty big meal that was very unhealthy, again, by kind of any metric that you look at. So again, I kind of wish that I had probably ordered something a little bit healthier yesterday.
Yes,
Yeah.
no, definitely. So yeah, so again, so just like just like in fact that leads on to another question, another issue, which is about the concept of best practice. So, like there's a concept of best practice where everyone has to eat
Yeah.
so much calories a day, so many times a day.
Yeah.
Whereas the concept of best practice doesn't work for every situation. Just like customer
Yeah.
service, you don't have a best practice. Yes, you follow this
No.
formula to guide you in the right direction, but at the end of the
Yeah.
day, you have to find the right formula for your given
Yeah.
scenario. And
Yeah.
again, I think it leads us on to a very good point, really. So it's all linked together, isn't it? It's all kind of,
Yeah.
yeah, great stuff.
Yeah.
So again, Vicky,
Yeah.
a
And
big thanks.
yeah.
Yeah. So
And
once
kind
again,
of one last thing. One
sure.
last thing is that I figured out that for kind of exam study, one of the big components that I found has led to success is that when people ask me for study tips, the first kind of things that I kind of always say is make sure you get a good night's sleep, make sure that you eat properly before, make sure that you exercise before, which have nothing to do with content. Because the reason why people fail exams is that the stress kind of gets to them too much. And then what happens is that despite that they have the best study resources, despite having the best study methods, despite having the best knowledge possible of a topic, they fail because of stress. So once you get your sleep right, once you get your food right, once you get exercise right, then you have a much higher chance of success. So it's all interconnected.
Thanks, Vicky. That's
Yeah.
comprehensive advice from Vicky there. So for everyone who's looking to pass their exams, remember to treat your body well, not just your brain. It's all interlinked, just like your customer service solutions. Everything is connected, as the previous speakers have mentioned earlier. So, yep, your body is a complex system, just like your customer service system. Yeah, just like all these other systems, they all need to be looked after. So thanks again. It was a great pleasure to host Vicky today. Thanks again for that session. And please feel free to carry on using the next 5 minutes to ask any other questions related to customer services, case management, and so on and so forth. As we prepare for our next speaker, I'm a big fan of our next speaker, Prashant G. Boyer. I've been a fan of him ever since he did his first session on 365 Saturday, I would say about a month ago, and ever since then I'm like, wow, he really does cover lots of the details which are often overlooked, and especially from security and architecture perspectives. So yeah, so I'm looking forward to Prashant's next session. He's up in 5 minutes. So are there any other questions? I'm sure there are many people with many questions, maybe linked to your particular implementation, maybe.